$12. That's the chuck roast in your grocery store's cold case, 3 feet from a $45 ribeye cut from the same steer. For 100 years, cooks have drowned that cheap slab in Dutch ovens and called it pot roast. But pitmasters in Central Texas figured out that if you treat a chuck roast like a giant steak, salt, post oak smoke, a finish in hot beef tallow, it eats like something a steakhouse would charge $60 for. The reason it works is printed on every butcher's chart in America. Almost nobody bothers to read it. To see why nobody tried this sooner, start with why chuck costs around $5 a pound. Chuck is shoulder. A 1,200-pound steer leans on that shoulder with every step it takes across a pasture. And muscles that work that hard build collagen, tough ropes of connective tissue threaded through the meat like packing tape. Grill a chuck roast hot and fast the way you'd grill a strip steak, and that collagen stays exactly what it is, which is why your jaw gives out before your plate is clean. So the whole country filed chuck under Sunday pot roast, set the braising liquid to a simmer, and moved on. That verdict stood for generations. It also missed something a handful of butchers already knew, and we're going to get to what that is. Texas has seen this exact story before. Walk into the old meat markets of Central Texas, the ones German and Czech butcher families opened in towns like Lockhart, Taylor, and Elgin, some of them running since the 1800s, and you're standing in the birthplace of a magic trick. Those butchers sold the premium cuts over the counter and got stuck with the rest, and rather than let the tough stuff spoil, they rubbed it with salt and black pepper and hung it over post oak coals until it surrendered. One of those leftover cuts was brisket. For decades, it sat near the bottom of the price list, a chest muscle so dense with connective tissue that no sane home cook wanted it. Today, a whole cooked brisket from a famous Austin joint can run north of $100, and people start lining up on the sidewalk before sunrise to pay it. The scrap cut became the trophy. The cooking never changed. Only the reputation did. That should tell you something uncomfortable about meat prices. They follow fashion, not flavor. And it raises a sharper question. If smoke and patience turned the cheapest cut in Texas into the most famous barbecue on earth, what else in the bargain bin is wearing a disguise? Pitmasters have been quietly auditioning candidates for years, and chuck roast smoked all the way to shredding. Tender has been passed around backyard forums as poor man's brisket for at least a decade. That version is good. The version you're about to hear is better, and it hinges on one decision that sounds like a mistake. It starts at the meat case. You want a chuck roast at least 2 inches thick, and you want the one with white flecks scattered through the red, because those flecks are fat that will melt into the muscle over a long, low fire. If the label says chuck eye roll, grab it and don't look back. Remember those words. At home, the night before the cook, trim off any hard gray fat on the outside, then salt every surface like you're mad at it, roughly a teaspoon of coarse salt per pound, and set the roast uncovered on a wire rack in the fridge. Overnight, the salt dissolves, pulls moisture to the surface, and rides it back down into the meat, seasoning the roast to its center instead of only the crust. It also loosens the protein structure, so the meat holds onto its juices over the fire. Salting ahead is the step impatient cooks skip. It's also half the trick. The next morning, coarse black pepper over the salt crust, and then the pit. Central Texas orthodoxy says post oak, and orthodoxy is right, because post oak burns clean and mild where mesquite can turn a long cook bitter. Run the fire around 250 degrees and set the roast on the side away from the coals. Then do nothing for about 2 hours except drink coffee and resist the urge to lift the lid. Every peak dumps your heat and adds time. Somewhere in that quiet window, the surface dries out, the pepper sets into the beginnings of bark, and gases from the burning oak react with the surface of the beef to lock in that deep rose band pitmasters call the smoke ring. It's the same chemistry that keeps cured ham pink, happening for free on your patio. And here the road forks. The poor man's brisket crowd keeps that fire rolling for 10 or 12 more hours until the collagen finally melts and the roast pulls apart like pot roast with a smoke ring. You're not doing that. You're going to slide a probe into the center, and the moment it reads about 120 degrees, the roast comes off, barely past rare. On a cut, everybody swears needs half a day. That number is the whole ball game, and it's the part that gets you called crazy at the pit. Beef collagen doesn't start dissolving in earnest until the meat spends serious time above roughly 160 degrees, which means the zone in the middle, the zone where a nervous cook usually panics and pulls the roast, produces meat with the texture of a wet boot. You either commit to the full melt or you stay under the line entirely and never wake the collagen up. Stopping at 120 keeps every muscle fiber relaxed and every drop of moisture where it belongs. 2 hours of oak smoke have already gone deeper than any steakhouse broiler reaches. The tough ropes never got a vote. Let the roast rest 20 minutes while a cast iron skillet heats until a drop of water skates across it and vanishes. Into that skillet goes a big spoonful of beef tallow, the rendered fat Texas joints, saved from their brisket trimmings and now guard-like currency. When it shimmers, the roast goes in, 60 seconds aside, maybe 90, pressing the edges down so the fat cap crackles. The sear finishes what the smoke started, slamming a dark, crunching crust onto the outside, while the center stays a blushing medium rare. Then the knife matters as much as the fire did. Find the direction the muscle fibers run and slice thin, straight across them, the way a good carver works a steakhouse rib roast. Go with the grain instead and you undo the whole day in one stroke, because long fibers chew like rope and short ones melt. So what does it actually eat like? The crust crunches, the smoke runs all the way through instead of sitting on the surface. And the tallow leaves the kind of fat, slicked finish that makes a table go quiet for a second. Put it next to a true ribeye and the chuck chews a shade firmer and tastes noticeably beefier, closer to what your grandparents probably remember beef tasting like. Serve it to guests without a word and watch what happens. Backyard cooks all over the internet have run that blind test and reported the same thing. Dinner guests calling a $5 a pound cut steakhouse quality. Do the math on the plate and it gets absurd. A $12 roast feeds 4 people the way $90 of ribeye would. And that brings us back to the butcher's chart and the secret printed on it. The muscle that makes a ribeye is called the longissimus dorsi, a long, lazy ribbon of meat running along the steer's back. It barely works, so it stays tender, and because it barely works, it collects marbling. That's the muscle you pay $20 a pound to eat. Butchers cut ribeye steaks from the stretch between roughly the 6th rib and the 12th. But the muscle does not stop at the 6th rib. It keeps going, forward into the shoulder, through the first 5 ribs, straight into the region every price sticker in America labels chuck. Same ribbon, same tenderness. The first few inches of it become a scarce cut called the chuck eye steak, only about 2 per steer. The one old line butchers were famous for setting aside and taking home themselves. And a thick roast cut from the chuck eye roll, the exact label you grabbed at the store, carries a core of that ribeye muscle wrapped in shoulder cuts that salt and low smoke were always able to handle. The $12 roast and the $45 steak share a muscle. The price changed at the spot where the saw happened to fall. Some pitmasters will tell you this is heresy, that real barbecue means collagen and patience, and anything pulled at 120 is a smoked steak wearing a cowboy hat. That's a fair fight, and it's worth having in the comments. But while the purists argue, the economics keep moving. Beef prices have climbed for years, brisket went from scrap to status symbol inside a single generation, and shoppers who watched it happen are already drifting toward the chuck section. This cut stays $12 only as long as the number of people who know what's inside it stays small. Brisket's window took about a century to close. The internet moves faster than a German meat market ever did. So the next time you're standing at the cold case, you're holding a strange kind of knowledge. The butcher's chart says the muscle is the same. The price tag disagrees, and the price tag is betting you'll never check. 100 years of shoppers took that bet and lost, the same way their grandparents lost on brisket. That leaves a question worth chewing on. How much of what you pay for in any aisle of any store is the thing itself? And how much is the name pinned to it? Fire this cook-off Saturday and come tell me what your table said. And when you're ready for the next cheap cut hiding in plain sight, the following video is already waiting.